The initial thing was I was playing guitar along with, I had a laptop with the drum beats that I wrote, so I was playing along with it. Like the beats and the sequence and everything just wasn't as impactful. Every night it was the same. So I was in art school and I basically was like, okay, what about trying to make those drums live? So I was building sculpture at the time already, like big mechanical sculpture, like things that moved and welded and machined. So I decided that I would try to play the drums live. So I was tapping the guitar and decided I would make something that I could hit, or a lever. And so then I, made a drum machine that I slid with my right hand, and then everything fell into line after that. That's what I need to build. I need to build something like the machines that I use to make metal, I guess. Yeah. I see this all the time. Bands ask me, oh, I need something because I want to make this stuff that I wrote. I want to be able to play it live. Well, the problem is you should have written that live, because if you sit in a studio and you program your drum beats, and then you program your synths, and then you layer another synth on top of it, and then you layer a vocal, and then a guitar, and then a saxophone, and then you've got 3 people in the band, and you can't play that all live. So people are like finding ways to play stuff live. So they'll have a drum pad and they'll play the snare. So the sequence runs and they just like play the snare because that's what they can do that's live. But what you should do is meditations of your body. You're not going to do more than you can, because I don't know about you, but sometimes you go and see these like industrial bands. The sequence is so busy, and you don't know what the people are doing. You don't see this or this and hear that. You've seen that guy who plays his push controller and he's like taking the table and throwing it in the air, but he's actually not doing anything musically with it. It's frustrating, but I understand that energy, that primal energy. He wants to do something, he doesn't have the tools, That's my current setup that I bring on tour. This is my original microphone. It's got 8. I only use the top 4 now, but they're little Letrek condenser mics. The idea is that you can sort of play multiple mics with your head, so it has the curved shape of your face, so you can, without moving too far. This one has SM57s, just the capsules. So on the right side, I usually do my light microphone where I sing soft. This is my heavy one, which has distortion. This one is very delay and reverb. So I can sort of like, and then do the soft stuff. Because sometimes you let one ring out and then you layer them, at the same time. Unfortunately, in musical instrument design, we have violins and we have guitars, and these are physical instruments. But in this sort of like digital age, especially for consumer grade electronics for music, it's just cheap as fuck. Even this Arturia keyboard that I bought, Keystep 32, used to be heavy. Well, the new one I bought is just total plastic, and it's very disappointing. When I work on microscopes at work, the panel interface that I'm working on has bigger knobs, it has levers, it has like buttons that feel good. This one's called Rails. It's the second drum machine that I built. Always drums, kick, snare, but then I decided I would put more buttons. So the first one I built just had 1 trigger. So in the front, it would be kick and it would be snare in the back. But then this one has 8 buttons, so I can play a full drum set. Like that. It has a linear encoder. The wires for the buttons and the linear encoder go back into here. And then there's a microcontroller inside of here. That's the electronics. That's why you have this on, it's to protect the electronics. Musicians and artists deserve to have that same quality of interface. And that's what I try to do, is whether I am building it myself or I find some sort of industrial surplus stuff that I repurpose for what I do, it's stuff that was intended for industrial automation. And yeah, it pulls back, it feels really good. But let's just say this, I don't have to pretend like the motion is intense. It is intense. I feel like I'm a smart person. I can figure things out, but those fucking grid things, like the Ableton Push, It sounds good, you know, but it's not primal, you know. I don't know if it's the way my brain works, but it just does not seem like the kind of thing that a musician should have to learn how to use. There's nothing musical about this grid of buttons that changes colors. This is a mini rack. It's just a pitch bend controller. Button, pitch bend. So note on, pitch bend. Arduino, old school. This is a throttle, new machine. This does volume, linear rotary encoder, and then this does pitch. I think the system stuff happens when I'm designing it. You know, I come up with how I want things to be laid out from the rack, designing the rack so everything plugs in and like patches. So it used to be crazy wires going everywhere, but when you've got to get on and off the stage quickly, it has to be really organized. So setting up the system beforehand, but then when I'm playing instruments, you know. But it does feel like more instruments than engineering tools. This is a rotary, this is a disc. So this is basically a pitch bend. So the faster this goes, higher the pitch bend is. So I just use this as like a, here's another version of that same thing, but it snaps into place. Kind of like a rotary phone, those old phones. So you can switch like chung, 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 chung. The only thing is when I make stuff for myself, I don't have to be, I can be a little bit more loose and a little bit more artistic when I'm designing this stuff in CAD. It's working for me, so I don't have to think about this part going into a machine where there's collaborators and I really am on the line to make it fit. I like that I can be a little bit like, I don't have to answer to anybody with my machines. If it doesn't work perfectly and it's good enough for me, that's good. This is just a giant fader, you know, like a crossfader on a CDJ. I just wanted to have one that was big and feels good, you know. There are moments when you get parts back from the fabricator, when you put them together and then you plug it in for the first time. That is very satisfying, but it's also very frustrating, you know. Like things don't work and I have to ship it back, and designing the electronics and dealing with people and programming. Like I hate programming but I have to do it. The sound comes from my computer. So everything is USB controllers. I use USB, but I use very industrial USB. So this right here is a Nutric USB. If you use an industrial one like this, it's never gonna come unplugged. So I have patch bays, and then I have Ableton, and it all controls in Ableton. And then I have a sound card with 16 outputs, so I break up all the sounds, kick, snare, cymbals. Yeah, I think the drums were from an Alesis SR16, run through an Octatrack with dark reverb tone through an analog heat electron distortion box. So then I sample those into Ableton, and then I use like my synth tone when I do the throttle or I do the keyboard is made up of like 7 different synths that are layered on top of each other. I'm very VST, some analog stuff, but I am not one of those analog dorks. I like using everything in the box. I know that not everyone has access to a lot of these parts, but there's so much industrial refuse out there that has the same components that we have in these keyboards and things. You know, like I bought this pedal, it has a giant switch in it, and that's all this is a bunch of switches. So you can make anything out there into an instrument. This shit's DIY. I don't hire people to do it. You know, I'm doing it myself. I have a partner in drum machines that works with me. He's one of my best friends now, and that's nice. But we don't get paid. He just helps me do it, you know. I think too many people are afraid of having a bad night. Man, I've had so many bad nights. I mean, something will happen tonight. Gear will break because I have a lot of gear, but some small thing will happen to us, and that's okay. You know, we'll play something wrong, Doug will play the guitar wrong, something will happen here, and I think that's just, you learn from that. Maybe you have an accident.
My name's Doug. I play guitar with Tristan, author and Punisher. I guess we've known each other for like maybe 15 years, so it's a little bit different than playing with a normal band, you know, but it's awesome for me. It definitely changed the way I play, but it also is a very fun way of changing the way I play and how I look at music and how I fit into some type of puzzle. Just the sound of strings mixed with the keyboards, it really gives it a much warmer tone, in my opinion. It's not as cold, because anyone could just kind of play a sequence or put on a drum machine and play along to it. It's been done for, I don't know, since the 70s or 80s. So this is what makes it interesting, the mistakes, the human element.
My beats aren't perfect, you know. My pitches that I bend, they aren't perfect either. It's not the same every night, even though it might look more robotic and mechanical. It's a way to make electronic music more organic. If you're a DJ and you're tired, your beat is always going to be perfect. So like, what's organic about that, you know? You always have no risk. There's risk here, it's humanity. We have bad nights. But sometimes when you have a bad night, maybe you compensate by doing something for the crowd, and I feel like that's just life, you know? And people are so afraid of doing that these days, of having a bad show, so they just pre-sequence everything. That's a shame. I don't want to be the uncle who says that shit. Shut up, Grandpa.
You could go to a show and you could listen to an album, and then there's no difference to that sometimes, and I think that what's the point? You just put the album on or go to a DJ night. But when you see a band and the mistakes are like, oh, that was different, or that was slower, or that was gnarlier because it was like a little bit off or whatever, I think that's the special part.
This is a fader. I use this to set my in-ear levels. I don't use this for anything that anyone hears. But like, these types of things are not fun to play to make music. This is the size of my body, so this makes more sense. You know, when they make machines in factories, they're not like this, they're big, you know, big buttons. I just write music like anybody else. I hook the stuff up and I just play, and I come up with riffs just like a band. So, and then I send those riffs to Doug. The songs that I've written by just sitting on my laptop and programming a beat never end up being a song that I would ever play live. If you don't write it by playing it live, it never becomes one of your songs because it's not meant to be played live. A lot of people wonder why the hell I would make dark music. If I made this setup and I just played techno, I could be like much more popular, which is true, but I have no interest in that. If I'm gonna play a different style of music, I would play, you know, acoustic or organic music, you know, not DJ stuff. It's called Doppler.